At my daughter's wedding, her arrogant and scornful fiancé jabbed a finger toward me and snapped at the waitstaff. "Don't serve this old man." Every guest in the room went still, but I just smiled. One of the waiters spoke up. "This is his restaurant." The groom's champagne glass slipped from his grip, and in that moment, his whole world collapsed. Welcome back to Dad's Revenge, or if this is your first time here, I'm glad you found your way. Before we get into the story, if something in it moves, you tap that subscribe button. So, the next one comes right to you. I'd love to know, is this your first story on this channel, or have you been with me a while? Drop a word in the comments, it means more than you know. A quick note before we begin. Some elements of this story have been shaped for the purposes of storytelling, and any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. It's the message underneath that I hope stays with you. The sound of a luxury engine broke the quiet Saturday evening calm in Elmhurst. From my kitchen window, I watched Nathan's gleaming Mercedes roll into my driveway, its chrome catching the glow of the streetlights. My hands trembled a little as I straightened the dinner table one final time. Claire had been building toward this moment for weeks. Her fiancé, the man who had taken her heart. The car door closed with that solid engineered thud. I dried my hands on the dish towel and walked to the front door, pulse hammering in my chest. Interesting neighborhood. Nathan's voice drifted through the evening air as his eyes swept the modest homes lining our street. Bit dated, isn't it? My jaw clenched, but I held the smile. He stood in the doorway wearing an expensive suit, his gaze moving over everything in my house with undisguised disappointment. The handshake came quick and perfunctory. "Dad, this is Nathan." Claire's voice was bright with nervous energy as she stepped up behind me. "Nathan, my father, Gerald Harlow." "Pleasure?" Nathan said, in a tone that suggested the opposite. His eyes slid past me into the house, and I caught that barely suppressed wince. "Welcome to our home," I managed, stepping back to let them in. "Claire's told me a great deal about you." We gathered in the kitchen where I'd spent the afternoon at the stove. Homemade chicken marsala, crusty sourdough, Claire's favorite Caesar salad. The whole house carried the smell of garlic and something close to hope. "You made all of this yourself." Nathan surveyed the spread with raised eyebrows. "How quaint." "This is where I raised Claire after her mother passed," I said quietly, holding his gaze. "For us, it's home." Claire stepped in quickly. "Dad's an incredible cook. He's the one who taught me everything Well, the main thing is your daughter's happy, right?" Nathan cut in his voice, carrying that particular register of someone addressing a child, though one could certainly do better. The words landed like a slap. Claire's face went crimson. "Nathan's just used to a different lifestyle," she said hurriedly, throwing him a sharp look. He hadn't meant to offend, she wanted me to believe, but I knew precisely what he meant. 40 years in business had given me a sharp eye for that look, the way his gaze appraised everything in the room, the faint curl at the corner of his mouth when he thought I wasn't watching. We moved to the living room after dinner. Nathan settled himself into my favorite chair, checking his Breitling twice within 5 minutes. His eyes drifted toward the family photos on the mantel. "Your daughter mentioned you work in restaurants," he said, barely pausing on the pictures of Claire's childhood. "That must be a strain financially." "I manage," I said carefully. "Dad's being modest," Claire said, tucking herself beside Nathan on the couch. "He's done very well." Nathan's laugh had an edge to it. "I'm sure he does his best, but Claire, sweetheart, you have to be honest with yourself about the kind of life you want." The condescension poured out of him like something he couldn't help. I held my coffee mug tighter, feeling the warmth bleed through the ceramic. This man looked at my daughter and saw a prize to be claimed, not a person to be loved. "Claire deserves everything beautiful in this world," I said, keeping my voice even. "Exactly my point." Nathan smiled, missing the meaning entirely. "Which is why I think it's time she experienced something beyond." He waved a hand around the room. "All this." Claire's expression flickered. She looked between us, sensing the tension thickening in the air, but unable to name its source. "I'll put the kettle on," she said at last, retreating to the kitchen. The silence she left behind felt charged. The second her footsteps faded, Nathan's whole bearing changed. The polished charm dissolved like smoke in a breeze. He leaned back in the chair, glancing at his watch with open boredom. "Listen, Gerald." He began lowering his voice to what he probably thought was a confidential register. "I don't mean to overstep, but but you might want to think about relocating. Claire deserves a better life. I set my coffee cup down with care. Better how? Come on. He gestured at the room with barely veiled contempt. Everything here says financial strain. The furniture, the neighborhood, that old car sitting in your drive. Claire's 31. She needs stability. Something warm rose in my chest, but I kept my voice level. I put my money into the business. The house isn't what matters most. His eyebrows lifted. Business. You mean your job at where exactly do you work? Restaurant industry, I said simply. It's complicated, but the outlook is good. Nathan's smile was the kind you give a child who announces they want to be an astronaut. I see. Well, having dreams is the important thing, isn't it? He pulled out his phone and began scrolling through messages with the casual rudeness of someone who considers his time categorically more valuable than yours. Look, no offense, but I pull mid-six figures in finance. I can give Claire everything she wants. European trips, designer clothes, a real home. He looked up briefly from the screen. You follow what I'm saying? I followed perfectly. In his reckoning, I was an embarrassing relative to be tolerated. Claire wasn't someone he loved. She was something he was acquiring. Claire's happiness is what matters most, I said quietly. Exactly. He leaned forward, gathering enthusiasm. And happiness is built on security, on knowing someone can provide. You're what 67 retirement's probably not far off. What happens then? The cold calculation behind those words took my breath. He had measured my entire life in 2 hours and declared it a failure. Every sacrifice I'd made raising Claire on my own. Every late night, building something worth leaving her, dismissed in a single contemptuous glance. I've spent decades in this industry, I said steadily. Learned more than a few things along the way. Sure, experience counts, no question. He waved his phone. But let's be honest about scale. The deals I close are worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. Claire needs a partner who can keep pace with her ambitions. Claire's voice floated in from the kitchen. She was on the phone, likely telling her friend Tara all about the nervous excitement of the evening. Nathan caught the shift in my attention and followed my glance. At once his expression rearranged itself. The mask dropped back into position, and the charming suitor Claire believed she was marrying reappeared in his place. Of course, I have enormous respect for what you've built here, he said quickly, warmth flooding back into his voice. Raising a daughter on your own, that's no small thing. But I had seen behind the curtain. I knew now exactly who Nathan Pemberton was. Claire's footsteps came closer, the soft clink of teacups on a tray announcing her return. Nathan sat up straighter, his smile sharpening with practiced ease. Everything all right out here? She asked, setting the tray down with gentle care. Wonderful, Nathan said, reaching for her hand. Your father and I were just getting better acquainted. Claire's relieved smile cut into me a little. She wanted this so badly, the two most important people in her life finding common ground. If only she knew what I'd just seen. Sunday morning came in on pale March light, filtering through my kitchen windows. I'd been up since 5 putting together what I hoped might serve as a fresh start. Waffles, fresh fruit, coffee strong enough to wake the dead. If Saturday had gone wrong, this was my chance to try once more. Nathan appeared from Claire's old room, looking rumpled already, checking his phone before he'd fully found his footing. Claire followed, hair tousled, but eyes bright with hope. Dad, you didn't have to go to all this trouble, she said. The gratitude underneath those words was plain enough. Sunday breakfast is tradition, I said, turning another waffle. Besides, an engagement deserves a proper celebration. Nathan made a sound that might have passed for thanks. His focus had already returned to whatever pressing message required his attention. Even on a Sunday morning, he couldn't let go of his important life. These smell amazing, Claire said, pouring fresh squeezed grapefruit juice into 3 glasses. Do you remember when you'd make these every weekend after Mom died? I'd help measure everything out. You got more flour on yourself than in the bowl. I laughed, the warmth of it cutting through everything else. Nathan glanced up from his screen. Cute, he said, and went back to scrolling. Claire's face dimmed for just a moment before she recovered. So Nathan tell Dad about the wedding plans. That got his attention. He put the phone away and launched into venues, caterers, and budgets that had my eyebrows climbing. Everything he laid out sounded grand and costly, built to impress rather than to celebrate. The ceremony at Highland Park United Methodist Church, he said, cutting his waffle with surgical strokes. Reception at the Perot Museum of Nature and Science, full orchestra, not some DJ setup. 300 guests minimum. Claire's eyes were lit up, though I noticed her watching me, reading my face. It sounds beautiful, I said carefully. What's the timeline? May 15th, Claire answered. I know it's soon, but Nathan found this remarkable window at the museum, and cost is no object, Nathan cut in. When you're putting together the social event of the season, you don't scrimp. Something in how he said it settled the matter for me. I set my fork down and looked straight at him. Nathan, I'd like to be part of making this wedding happen in whatever way I can, organizationally and financially. The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 heartbeats. Then Nathan laughed. Not a polite chuckle or an awkward response, but a full, genuine laugh that filled my kitchen with something close to cruelty. You, he said, dabbing at his eyes, how could you possibly help? You don't even have a decent house. Claire's face went white. Nathan? Sorry, honey, but let's be honest here. He swept his hand around my kitchen with the same dismissive gesture he'd used the night before. We're talking about a $40,000 wedding. Your father's probably getting by on Social Security and whatever he put aside from his restaurant work. That is my father. Claire's voice fractured with humiliation and fury. Nathan raised both hands in mock surrender. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm being practical. We'll handle it ourselves like adults. Something cold and final settled in my chest. I understand, I said quietly. Then I'll just be glad to see you both happy. But as I cleared the breakfast dishes, watching Nathan scroll his phone while Claire sat staring at her hands, I arrived at a very different decision. If Nathan Pemberton believed Gerald Harlow couldn't give his daughter the wedding she deserved, he was about to discover exactly how wrong a man could be. I had spent 30 years building Harlow's distinction from a single restaurant into a 12-location empire. My net worth could purchase and dissolve Nathan's precious career several times over. He wanted to make this about money and status. Fine, let him. The rest of Sunday passed quietly after they left. Claire hugged me goodbye with more warmth than usual, perhaps feeling the tension she couldn't quite put a name to. Nathan barely managed a handshake. By evening, I was in my study, surrounded by 3 decades of memories. Family photos lined the walnut shelves. Claire's first day of school, her college graduation, the afternoon she landed her first design job. Scattered among them sat my business awards, deliberately unassuming, quietly gathering dust. I picked up my favorite photograph. Claire at 8 years old, flower on her nose, grinning beside a lopsided birthday cake we'd made together. Her mother would have known what to do. Vivian always carried a wisdom I couldn't match. My phone buzzed. Walter Crane's name appeared on the screen. Gerald, you sound troubled. Walter, I don't know what to do. My daughter is in love with someone I can't stand. A long silence stretched between us, weighted with 40 years of friendship. Walter had been my best man. He'd held my hand at Vivian's funeral, had been there for every milestone in Claire's life. What specifically bothers you about him? I set the photograph down carefully. He's arrogant. He belittles me in front of Claire, treats her like something he's acquired, but she loves him. Or believes she does. Maybe, but it's her choice to make. Walter's sigh carried through the line. Remember when Claire was 16 running around with that motorcycle kid? You wanted to lock her in her room. That was different. Was it you trusted her judgment then? She figured it out on her own. I moved to the window and looked out at the quiet neighborhood Nathan had dismissed so easily. Every house on that street held families, dreams, struggles invisible to anyone who measured worth and price tags. Give her time to figure it out herself, Walter continued. But stay close. Be the father she needs when reality sets in. Maybe you're right, but I'm paying for this wedding myself. Gerald, Walter's voice carried a note of warning. Don't do anything foolish. Nothing foolish, just making sure my daughter gets the wedding she deserves. After we hung up, I opened my leather journal, a habit Vivian had pressed me to keep decades ago. The pages held business notes, personal reflections, thoughts about Claire's future. Tonight's entry was different. April wedding planning begins tomorrow. Time to show Nathan Pemberton what real love looks like. I closed the journal and reached for my business phone. 3 weeks should be enough to arrange everything properly. Clifton Abreu answered on the second ring. Gerald working late on a Sunday. Clifton, I need to call in some favors. 3 weeks of careful planning had passed since that Sunday evening. I'd made quiet arrangements with vendors across Dallas, drawing on connections built over 30 years in the restaurant trade. Nathan remained happily oblivious while Claire buzzed with excitement about finally getting the wedding preparations underway. The bridal salon on Knox Street sparkled like something from Claire's childhood storybooks. Crystal chandeliers threw rainbow light across ivory silk and delicate lace. Claire moved through the displays with an artist's eye, her designer's instincts cataloging every detail. "Dad, look at this one." She lifted a dress with intricate beadwork. "Isn't it stunning? You look radiant in everything, sweetheart." The consultant, a composed woman named Petra, steered us toward the appointment area. "We have several options within your price range, Miss Harlow." Nathan arrived 25 minutes late, his eyes already moving between his watch and his phone. "Sorry, client emergency. What did I miss?" "We're just getting started," Claire said, kissing his cheek. "Petra's been showing us some beautiful pieces." "Great. Let's keep it sensible, though. We discussed the budget." Petra kept her professional smile in place, though I caught a brief tightening around her eyes. She'd dealt with this sort before. Claire disappeared into the dressing room with Petra's help. When she came back out in the first gown, a simple but truly elegant design, my breath left me. She was the image of her mother on our wedding day. "What do you think?" Claire turned slowly, the fabric moving like water. "Perfect," I whispered. Nathan leaned in to check the price tag. $3,000 for something you'll wear once. Claire's face fell. "It is expensive. Maybe something plainer." "Nonsense." I got to my feet, my voice steady. "This is your wedding day, not a budget exercise." "Gerald, be realistic," Nathan said sharply. "You can't afford this kind of indulgence." Petra moved forward with practiced diplomacy. "We do have payment plans available and a range of options to consider." I walked over to her, keeping my voice measured, but making sure Nathan could hear every word. "The dress my daughter wants is the dress she'll have. Cost is not a concern." Nathan's eyebrows climbed. "What do you mean, cost isn't a concern?" Claire emerged from the dressing room in an even more breathtaking gown. Cathedral train, hand-sewn pearls, designer label. She looked like royalty. "This one is $8,000, Petra said carefully, watching our faces. Nathan laughed without warmth. "Absolutely not. We're not going into debt over a costume." But Claire wasn't looking at Nathan anymore. She was looking at herself in the mirror, tears rising in her eyes. "I feel like a princess." "Then that's the one," I said simply. Petra nodded and made a note. "I'll draw up the paperwork." As Claire went to change, Nathan pulled me aside. "What are you playing at, Gerald? You'll run yourself into the ground trying to impress people." I smiled unhurried. My daughter deserves to feel like a princess on her wedding day. That isn't a game. When Claire came back, her face alight, I knew I hadn't been wrong. Petra slipped me her card with the arrangements for a private payment. Nathan might hold sway over many things, but this wedding was going to be Claire's dream come true. 2 weeks on, we'd settled into a rhythm. Every afternoon brought a new vendor appointment, another opening for Nathan to reveal what he truly valued. Claire kept up her cheerful diplomacy, but I could see the strain beginning to collect behind her eyes. The flower shop on McKinney Avenue was alive with April-color roses, peonies, lilies of the valley. Claire's artistic nature woke up among the blooms. She sketched arrangements in her notebook, composing combinations that could have come from a professional portfolio. "What about these for the centerpieces?" She held up a pairing of white roses and baby's breath. "Simple but elegant." Mrs. Callahan, the shop owner, gave an approving nod. "A beautiful choice, very classic. For 300 guests, that comes to approximately $4,000. Nathan's pen went still against his calculator. $4,000 for flowers that'll be dead in 3 days. "They're not just flowers," Claire said quietly. "They set the atmosphere. They become the memory." "They create debt," Nathan replied. He turned toward Mrs. Callahan. "What's your least expensive option?" Claire's sketchbook closed with a soft snap. Mrs. Callahan glanced between them, visibly uncomfortable. "Perhaps we could adjust the arrangements," she offered carefully. "Fewer premium blooms, more greenery to fill the space." I stepped forward. "What would you suggest for the most beautiful wedding you could design?" Mrs. Callahan's face came alive. "Garden roses, white orchids trailing jasmine along the ceremony arch, reception centerpieces, with seasonal blooms and floating candles for the ambient lighting." "Perfect. Do exactly that." Nathan stared at me. "Gerald, that's probably $8,000. Claire deserves beautiful flowers." Later at the music agency downtown, the same pattern played out again. Nathan pushed for a basic DJ, while Claire longed for the string quartet that would give her ceremony the feeling she'd always imagined. Live music creates such a different atmosphere, she said to him, her voice carrying more strain than before. Remember when we went to your colleague's wedding? The violin during their vows made everyone cry. Violins are expensive tears, Nathan replied, eyes already back on his phone. A DJ plays the same songs for half the price. Dwight Beaumont, the music coordinator, walked us through the options from simple recorded tracks all the way to a full orchestra. Claire's gaze followed the higher-end packages with unconcealed longing. The string quartet is our most requested choice for intimate ceremonies, Dwight explained. 4 musicians, a repertoire spanning classical and contemporary. For the reception, we could bring in a pianist through dinner, then shift to dance music as the evening opens up. What's the total? Nathan asked flatly. Approximately $6,000 for the complete package. Nathan shook his head without hesitation. Absolutely not. What comes next is the moment I had been quietly waiting for, the one that would show me exactly what kind of man my daughter had chosen. Before we get there, I want to ask you something. If someone underestimated you right to your face, would you correct them on the spot? Or would you let your actions do the talking? We'll go with the DJ. Claire's notebook stayed shut through the rest of the discussion. I watched her dreams quietly shrinking to fit Nathan's budget, her enthusiasm fading with every compromise. Mr. Beaumont, I said quietly, please arrange the string quartet exactly as described. My daughter should have the wedding music she wants. Dwight nodded and made his notes. As we got ready to leave, he handed me his card with a look that said, he understood. Outside, Nathan came at me again. Where exactly is all this money coming from, Gerald? You're behaving as though your resources are unlimited. I glanced at Claire, who was staring at the pavement with the worn-out look of someone who'd spent another afternoon watching her vision get whittled down to Nathan's comfort level. My daughter's happiness is worth any price. The look Claire gave me then, grateful, bewildered, but trusting, reminded me precisely why I was doing this. The week after we settled on the music, Claire suggested we take on the biggest decision of all, the venue. 3 restaurants in uptown Dallas had caught her attention, each representing a different level of elegance and expense. We gathered outside the first one on a gray Thursday afternoon. Nathan arrived with his calculator app already open, muttering about per-head costs before we'd cross the threshold. Remember, we need to stay grounded, he told Claire, pocketing his phone. The flowers and the music already pushed us over. Claire's face tightened, but she found a smile. I know, Dad helped us make those work. The first 2 venues delivered exactly what I'd expected. Decent food, adequate rooms, prices that made Nathan's eye twitch with each additional figure. He dismissed both with growing impatience, glancing at his watch as though the walkthroughs were a personal affront to his schedule. This is taking forever, he muttered as we headed toward the 3rd location. Can't we just land on something reasonable and be done with it? Harlow's Distinction sat at the waterfront like a crown jewel, its floor-to-ceiling windows holding White Rock Lake's afternoon light. I had spent 15 years perfecting every detail of this flagship location, from the imported marble floors to the custom crystal chandeliers. Claire's breath caught the moment we stepped inside. Oh my! The hostess guided us through the main dining room, past tables draped in crisp white linens toward the private event space. Every step carried us deeper into the restaurant I'd built with my own hands, through rooms staffed by people who had known me for years. The ceremony space looks out over the water, our guide explained, pressing open the French doors to reveal the terrace. Reception here in the main room, with a full dance floor and complete bar service. Claire pressed close to the glass, watching sailboats drift across the lake. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Nathan was back on his phone. What's the number for 300 guests ceremony reception premium menu, full bar full service? Approximately $50,000. The silence that followed could have cracked crystal. 50,000? Nathan's voice climbed an octave. This restaurant costs as much as my annual salary. There are places 3 times cheaper. But the atmosphere here is extraordinary, Claire said softly, her voice heavy with disappointment. That view of the lake. A wedding only comes around once, I said carefully. Worth making it something no one forgets. Nathan turned on me. Easy to say when you're not the one writing the check. Mr. Harlow. The voice came from behind us. It was Bart Delano, the restaurant manager, someone I'd brought on 5 years ago, one of my most trusted people. My blood went cold. "We always have a table for you, sir. Just say the word if you need anything specially arranged." The words hung there like a lit fuse. Nathan's eyes sharpened, suddenly attentive. Claire looked between Bart and me with growing confusion. "Thank you," I said quickly, "but we're here as regular guests today, just exploring options like anyone else." Bart read the situation immediately. "Of course. Please don't hesitate if you have questions about our services." Nathan's phone buzzed mercifully, pulling his focus back to whatever emergency required him. But Claire was still watching me, with questions I couldn't yet answer. "We can't afford this place," Nathan announced, slipping his phone away. "It's completely out of reach. We'll have to go with one of the cheaper options." Claire's shoulders dropped. I watched 31 years of dreams dissolve behind her eyes, replaced by the quiet resignation of someone accepting less than she deserved. "Let's talk it over at dinner," I suggested. "No need to decide right now." But as we moved back through my restaurant past the staff, I had trained through the dining room. I had designed toward the door of the business I had built from nothing. The decision was already made in my mind. Nathan would never agree to this venue, not unless he believed he wasn't the one footing the bill. Claire appeared at my door the next morning, eyes red from a night of crying. I hadn't seen her look so defeated since her mother's illness. "We fought all night," she said, dropping into my kitchen chair with exhausted familiarity. "Nathan thinks I'm being unrealistic about everything. The dress, the flowers, the music, and now the restaurant. He says I'm living in a fantasy world." I poured coffee into her favorite mug, the one with tiny bluebirds she'd painted in high school art class. "What do you want?" "I want to get married at Harlow's Distinction." Her voice cracked. "I felt like a princess there yesterday. But Nathan's right about the money. We can't afford it." After she left for work, I called Bart directly. "Bart, I need a favor that calls for complete discretion." "Of course, Mr. Harlow. What do you need?" "I want to book the May 15th wedding we walked through yesterday. Full service exactly as quoted, but I need it to appear as though the family received a 60% discount." Bart was quiet for a moment, working through the implications. "A special rate for restaurant industry connections." "Exactly. You've known me for years through my consulting work. As a personal favor, you're offering the family a substantial reduction. Can you arrange the paperwork to make that story hold up?" "Consider it done. The bride's family will receive a bill for $20,000 instead of $50,000. We'll settle the difference through your corporate account." "Perfect. And Bart, no one can know the real arrangement. Not your staff, not the family, not anyone." "Completely understood, sir." An hour later, my phone rang. Claire's voice was electric with excitement. "Dad, you won't believe what just happened. Bart Delano called me directly. He said because of your connections in the restaurant industry, they can offer us Harlow's Distinction for $20,000 instead of $50,000. That's wonderful, sweetheart. He said you've done consulting work for several restaurants, and they want to return the favor. Nathan's suspicious about how you pulled off a discount that size, but he can't argue with the numbers." That evening, Nathan called me himself. "Gerald, I don't fully understand how you manage this, but I owe you an apology. That discount changes everything. $20,000 is still significant, but we can work with it." "Just restaurant industry connections," I replied simply. "People look out for each other in this business." "Well, whatever you did, thank you. Claire is over the moon about having her dream venue." I put the phone down and opened my journal, writing with care. Harlow's Distinction, booked for May 15th. Claire will have her perfect wedding day. Nathan still has no idea who's really paying. 2 weeks of final preparations led to this morning. I stood in the lobby of Harlow's Distinction at 7 a.m., officially there as an early arriving father of the bride. In truth, I was running final coordination with my staff. "Everything in order, Bart?" I asked quietly. "Perfect, Mr. Harlow. Kitchen's prepped for 300 guests, bars fully stocked, flowers came in an hour ago. The only question is when you want the reveal." "Not yet. Let's let the day unfold first." The restaurant moved with controlled energy. Servers polished glassware. Chefs worked their stations. Florists arranged centerpieces. My operation running at full speed, building the perfect day for my daughter. What no one yet knew was that it was also building the perfect stage for Nathan Pemberton to show exactly who he was. Harlow's Distinction gleamed in the early morning light. Every surface brought to a shine, every detail in its place. Wedding guests began arriving by 10 o'clock, filling the room with laughter and warmth. Claire looked radiant in her $8,000 gown. Nathan was sharp in his rented tuxedo. I watched from across the room as they welcomed their guests, the picture of a happy couple. Nathan wasted no time stepping into his role as the generous groom. He shook hands with servers, praised the appetizers, made easy jokes about sparing no expense for his beautiful bride. But I noticed things others didn't. "This champagne is too warm," he snapped at Rosa, our head server. "How difficult is it to keep drinks properly chilled?" Rosa, who had been with us 8 years, kept her composure without a flicker. "I'll bring you a fresh glass immediately, sir. You should have had it right the first time." 30 minutes later, he cornered Stuart, our sommelier, near the bar. "The wine list feels thin. Don't you have anything more expensive? People are going to think we're cutting corners." Stuart offered to open the reserve selection, but Nathan dismissed it with a wave. "Never mind, just pour whatever. Half these people wouldn't know good wine anyway." During cocktail hour, I watched him complain about the temperature of the past hors d'oeuvres, take issue with the spacing between tables, and instruct the photographer on which was his good side. Every exchange revealed a little more of the man Claire believed she was marrying. The ceremony began at noon overlooking White Rock Lake. Claire walked down the aisle to the string quartet's arrangement of Pachelbel's Canon tears running freely down my face as she passed. For a moment, everything else disappeared. My little girl was getting married. Who gives this woman to be married to this man? "I do," I said, my voice barely holding. The reception moved seamlessly from ceremony to cocktails to dinner. Every detail I'd quietly put in place came together without a seam. Claire laughed with her friends, danced with her new husband, and glowed with a happiness I hadn't seen in years. Nathan, though, grew bolder with each glass of wine. "Excuse me." He caught Tyler, our youngest server, crossing the floor with a full tray. "These plates aren't hot enough. Food's meant to come out on heated plates." Tyler, barely 22 and working his way through college, stumbled over an apology. "I'll check with the kitchen, sir." "Don't check, fix it. How hard is basic service?" I rose to intervene, but Tyler had already slipped away, his face red with embarrassment. The final breaking point arrived during dessert. Nathan got to his feet, a shade unsteady, and called across the dining room to Daphne, our pastry chef, who was personally overseeing the wedding cake presentation. "Hey, the cake is supposed to come with champagne, not this cheap sparkling wine. What kind of operation are you people running?" The room went still. 300 guests turned to look. Claire's face drained white with mortification. Daphne, who had won a James Beard nomination last year, stood frozen with humiliation. That was when I finally stood up. As evening settled over White Rock Lake, Nathan's confidence swelled with every fresh glass of champagne. Working the room like a man at the height of his own story, he collected congratulations while delivering increasingly sharp remarks to the people serving our guests. "These appetizers are cold," he snapped at Rosa as she came by with a new tray. "Don't you know anything about proper service?" Rosa, who had been working elegant events for 8 years, held her composure without a crack. "I'll bring you a fresh selection at once, sir. You should have gotten it right the first time." From my seat, I watched the pattern keep repeating. Nathan criticized the wine temperature, to Stuart complained about the table arrangement to Tyler, and talked the photographer through his preferred angles. Each exchange gave me another clear view of the man my daughter had married. The moment that changed everything came during coffee service. Nathan rose from his chair, swaying a little, his voice cutting across the dining room with the confidence that comes from too much champagne. He pointed straight at me, sitting quietly at the family table. "Don't bother with that old beggar," he announced loud enough for nearby tables to catch every word. "He's probably the poorest person in the room. Save the good stuff for guests who matter." Several heads turned. Claire's face went crimson with humiliation. I just smiled, the unhurried smile of a man who had been waiting months for precisely this moment. Stuart arrived at our table carrying a bottle of our finest champagne, a $200 vintage I'd set aside for special occasions. "Excuse me, sir," Stuart said to Nathan with measured courtesy, "but this is his restaurant." Nathan laughed, the sound ringing off the crystal chandeliers. "His restaurant? That's the funniest thing I've heard all night." Stuart straightened, speaking with the quiet authority of someone who'd worked for the same employer for 5 years. "Yes, sir. This is Mr. Gerald Harlow's restaurant. He owns the entire Harlow's distinction chain, 12 locations across the Southwest." The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Nathan's champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering against the marble floor, with a sound that seemed to echo through every corner of the room. The color left his face as completely as wine drains from a broken bottle. "What?" He stammered, his eyes moving between Stuart and me. "What did you just say?" Around us, guests who had caught the exchange began murmuring to one another. Claire sat motionless, mouth slightly open, the full picture coming into focus. The reason her father had been so unhurried, so unbothered by every wedding expense. I stayed in my seat watching Nathan absorb information that would shift everything between us. "Perhaps," I said quietly, "we should find a proper moment to discuss this." Nathan's legs seemed to go out from under him, and he dropped into the nearest chair, his face now the color of chalk. The broken glass caught the light on the floor as Tyler moved in quickly with a dustpan to clear it away. 12 restaurants. Nathan whispered, his voice barely finding volume. "You own 12 restaurants." Claire moved between us, her wedding dress whispering like silk. "Dad, is this true?" "Harlow's distinction has been my life's work," I said simply. "I started with one location 30 years ago." But you live in that small house," Nathan stammered, his arrogance dissolving like morning mist. "Your old car, your clothes. I believe in living within what I need. A person's worth isn't measured in what they spend." The irony wasn't lost on anyone within earshot. Nathan had spent 2 months measuring my worth by exactly that standard. Other guests began drifting toward our table, suddenly eager to congratulate the father of the bride. The news moved quickly through the reception. The quiet man in the plain suit was the owner of the very room they were standing in. "Mr. Harlow," said Audrey Whitfield, one of Nathan's colleagues, "we had absolutely no idea. This place is extraordinary." Nathan watched this transformation with visible dread. The same people who had barely registered my presence an hour before now wanted my attention. My card, my perspective. "Gerald, Nathan started, his voice unsteady. "I owe you an enormous apology. I had no idea who you were, what you'd built." "You knew exactly who I was," I replied, measured and calm. "I'm Claire's father. That should have been sufficient." Claire lowered herself into the chair beside me, her face layered with confusion and slow dawning understanding. "All those vendors," she said softly. "The dress, the flowers, the music, you arranged all of it, didn't you? I wanted you to have the wedding you deserved." "But Nathan said we couldn't afford." She stopped herself, looking between us as the full picture assembled. Nathan leaned in urgently. "Claire, sweetheart, I was only being practical. I had no idea your father had accomplished so much. Accomplished enough to deserve basic respect." There was an edge in Claire's voice I had never heard before. The celebration went on around us, but our small circle had become its own island apart from the rest. Nathan kept glancing between Claire and me, clearly working through how to recover the ground he'd lost. "Look, Gerald, we got off to a rough start, but we're family now. Maybe we could sit down and talk about some business possibilities." The speed of the pivot from contempt to opportunity was almost too transparent to take seriously. "Perhaps," I said, rising slowly. "But right now, let's let Claire enjoy what's left of her wedding reception. We can talk another time." Though I could see in my daughter's eyes that she was no longer certain how much of this reception or this marriage she still wanted to be part of. A week later, Nathan sat in my office reception area, tugging at his tie like a schoolboy outside the principal's door. The 42nd floor of the Comerica Bank Tower gave a sweeping view of the city, and my office carried 30 years of something built with intention. My assistant brought him in at precisely 10 o'clock. "Gerald, thank you for making time." He began, his voice calibrated to a respect he had never shown before. The walnut desk between us might as well have been a continent. Behind me, framed awards from the Texas Restaurant Association caught the morning light. Along one wall, photographs of Claire through the years, her graduation, her first design job, moments that no amount of money could purchase. "I owe you a real apology." Nathan continued, settling uneasily into the leather chair across from me. "What I did at the wedding was inexcusable. I'd had too much to drink and my mouth moved ahead of my judgment. Alcohol doesn't build character, Nathan. It shows you what's already there." He shifted. "I understand how it looked, but I've been carrying serious financial pressure, planning a wedding on my salary, trying to give Claire the life she deserves." "Yet you never once asked what she actually wanted. You decided what she was allowed to have based on your own limitations." "I was trying to be responsible." Responsibility doesn't require treating staff with contempt. Nathan's face flushed. Those were isolated moments. That's not who I normally am. Rosa has worked for me 8 years, Stuart for 5. Tyler is putting himself through college. Daphne won a James Beard nomination last year. Every one of them deserves the same courtesy you'd extend to any guest. The words settled between us like a verdict. Nathan nodded steadily, though I could see he was running calculations rather than genuinely listening. I hear you completely, and I want to make things right with you and with Claire. She means everything to me, and I know she means everything to you. Here it came. I was hoping we might explore some business possibilities together. My background in finance could bring real value to your expansion plans. Nathan. My voice had the finality of a door closing. I've built what I've built by keeping myself surrounded by people of genuine character. Success without character is nothing more than wealth, and wealth without wisdom is just numbers sitting in a bank account. His expression, hopeful a moment ago, quietly wilted. That said, I went on, you are married to my daughter, which makes you family whether that sits well with me or not. I pulled open the desk drawer and took out a small leather notebook, the same journal I'd been filling since that Sunday evening 2 months ago. These are my conditions. You will treat every person regardless of their position or standing with dignity and respect. You will remember that Claire married you out of love, not for financial security. And you will understand that my commitment to my daughter does not automatically mean I'm bankrolling your ambitions. Nathan nodded keenly. Absolutely, I understand completely. We would see about that. I shut the journal and rose from my chair. Through the windows, Dallas spread out below, like a city built on a million small choices about how people treat one another. Claire has chosen to keep your apartment and carry on with her design work. She has also chosen that any children you have will know their grandfather as the man who showed her that respect is not something you negotiate away. Nathan got to his feet as well, the relief plain on his face. Thank you, Gerald. You won't regret giving me this chance. As he reached the door, I spoke one last time. Nathan, I didn't give you a chance. Claire did. Don't waste it. After he was gone, I opened the journal a final time. The wedding is over. Justice is served. Now we find out whether people are truly capable of change or whether they simply become more skilled at concealing who they really are. Time will tell. And that is where the story leaves us, not with a shout, but with a question written quietly in a leather journal. Time will tell. Looking back, I think about what it truly cost to get here. 30 years of building something real, of living below what I had, of biting my tongue when men like Nathan spoke over me. I believe God doesn't waste those quiet seasons. The patience I practiced all those years became the very thing that made the moment matter. No outburst could have done what silence and preparation did. If this family revenge story taught me anything worth passing on, it's this. Never let what someone assumes about you become the ceiling on what you know you're capable of. If you hide your worth to protect your peace, make sure the people closest to you understand why silence can look like weakness to the ones who love you. A man who measures others by their bank account will eventually stand in a room and realize the person he dismissed holds the deed. And when the truth finally comes out, let it speak for itself. You don't need to raise your voice when the facts are already in the room. If this story sat with you, I'd be grateful if you shared it with someone who needs to hear it. A parent, a friend, anyone who has ever been looked past by someone who thought they knew better. Leave me your thoughts in the comments below. Stories like this one are why Dad's Revenge exists, and every comment reminds me why it's worth telling them. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of the ones who earned it.